Okay, and welcome back to part two, where we're learning, where it's the beginner's guide to construct. Uh, like I said in the last video, this is aimed at total beginners for construct, or if you've never ever made a game before, this is a great place to start. In the last video, we just set up the player and the enemy. We talked about some of the little quirks of the angles and stuff in construct. So if you haven't seen that video, go back and have a look at it. There's some important information in there. But I'll just hit play and show you where we were. Now, we're making like a Space Invaders sort of thing, but it's going to be a little bit different. But right now, we've got a player that will move back and forwards and enemies that will come down to us, but there's no interaction. So the first thing we're going to do today is start with that interaction. So let's go over to our event sheet. This is where we write our code. And again, if you lose any of this, so if I close the event sheet down, I could just come over here and double click and open it back up. So no problem there. I'll just increase the size of that so you can see it a little better. Okay, so let's go and add another event. So this is event number 3. Click on that, and we want to kill the enemy when the bullet hits them. So let's grab the player bullet and type COL for collision. And we want on collision with another object. The object we're checking to collide, if we've collided with, is the enemy. Okay, so that's the if statement. If the bullet collides with the enemy, type in DES for destroy. And next. I'll just put these over here so you should be able to see those a little better. Okay, so if and then statement. If the player's bullet collides with the enemy destroys. All right. Now, what we could do is we could add some fancy pants particle effects for when he gets blown up. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to add an explosion later on. So instead of doing that now, we'll come back later on, and we've got a cool explosion sprite that I want to show you how to import. So we'll do that. Right, so let's test that. Okay, look at that. All right, I'm a gaming god. That's why. Right, so let's go and do the opposite. So if the enemy collides with the player destroys. So enemy on collision with another object, player, then hit done. So that's our, let's move these along so we can see all of this. Oh, we can't. Okay, never mind. So enemy on collision with player, and just type DES for destroy. Simple. Okay, let's test that. So now when the enemy hits us, we should get destroyed. And we do. All right. So that's all working, but it's not very fun right now. Yeah, we've only got 3 enemies, and what we really want is a way to spawn the enemies infinitely. So this is sort of like an infinite game. So let's do that. So what we're going to do is create a spawn block. So we're going to right click. Oh, my right click, my mouse, is something wrong with it. So right click, insert new object, and it's a sprite. Now I always make my spawning blocks bright pink because I don't generally use bright pink for that much else. So I just use that. And so as soon as I see it, I know it's a spawn block. So I'm going to call this enemy spawn block _01. And I'm going to make it 64,64 for the size. And then I'm going to place it just there. Right? I'm going to then delete these enemies. Or you have to have one in your layout. So I'm just going to place one down there. Now later on, we'll just create a layout for all this stuff that we need in a layout, but we don't want in this one. So we'll just create a new layout. But you have to have a copy of something that's going to be used in your layout in the layout. That's important. Okay, so we've got this spawn block, but we want more than one. So I'm going to right click on this guy, and I'm going to come down to where it says clone object type. I'm going to click on that, and then it's going to give me that little selector again, and then see here it's enemy spawn block 2. It hasn't put the 0 in there. So I'm just going to get rid of the 0 in this one as well. Okay. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. So come to this guy, right click. If my right click will work, which it's not. Oh, that's not good for a tutorial. I don't know why. There we go. Clone object type, and then click over here. All right, so let's get kind of an even spread between these. Oh, man. Just a second. I have to go through this every now and again. All right. So they're going to be our spawn blocks. We can put them better positioning later on. So what we want to do is come over to our event sheet and think about how we're going to set that up. So we're going to add our 5th line of code. So let's add an event, and this is going to be for spawn block 1. And what we want to do is we don't want to come to that straight away. We want to add an event, but it wants to be a system event. Okay. So this is all the things that happens like behind the scenes that we can have access to. Scroll right down to the bottom to where it says every X seconds. Now the X represents a number. So if we click on that, we can type in how often we want something to happen. But what we want is this to be random. All right. So we are actually going to write a little bit of code here. All you need to do is type the word random. If you don't know how to spell it, it'll just come up here. And you can just click on there and it'll add it. Okay. And then I want you to open a curly bracket. All right. Now, whatever 2 numbers we put in this curly bracket will be the range of the randomness. So if I put in 2,5 and then close the bracket and hit enter, that says every random 2 to 5 seconds. So every 2 to 5 seconds, then go and do this thing. Right. So this is the if statement, and then we need to do the then statement. The then statement is enemy spawn block 1, and then just type spawn another object, and that object wants to be enemy. All right. Now remember, we've already set enemy to always move 2 pixels. So as soon as he spawns, he should move it. It should move down. So let's give that a test. There he goes. And there's the next one. Right. Okay, cool. So we need to now set that up for the other 2. Now, what we could do is, click and do the same thing again. But what a quicker and much more effective way is just to copy the whole line of code. So we can copy 3 different things here. We can copy just the action. We can copy just the event. Or if we click on this, so this will select just the action. Clicking here will select the event. But if you click here, right at the end, here or here, you'll select everything. Okay. Now hold down Control and then hit C and then hit V, and that's going to copy it once. And then hit V again, it's going to copy it another time. So we do have to go back in here and amend this, but it's super easy to do. So first, let's deal with this event that isn't right. So double click on it to open it. This is fine, but we want to go back again, and this time we want it to be for the enemy spawn block 2. So just click on that. Next. Oops, back. Not done it right. Next. Why? That's not right. I'm having problems with this today. Oh no, so this is, we can go in and change this, but it's not this bit. It's this bit we want to change, right? So double click on this bit, back, and here's the bit we want to change. So next, and then done. And it'll remember everything, so you don't have to go back and do it again. And then here, double click on it to open it up, back, and this time it's for enemy spawn block 3. Next, done, and done. But again, we probably want to go in and change the randomness for each one, but we can do that later. So let's hit play and see what happens. So now we have a random amount of enemies coming towards us, and they have like a bit of movement on them. They don't shoot back at us. I don't think we're going to have enemies that shoot back at us, because we're just going to keep this super simple. We're going to put in a score and lives and all that sort of stuff, but I don't want it to be too complicated at all. We probably won't get to multiple enemies. Let's have a look at the time. Okay, so now we've got that in, let's try our best to get this full, what I call the full game loop, all right? So that we can die, they can die, the game will restart, if we run out of lives, the score, and all that kind of stuff. So what we need to do to get a lives and score working is we need to add some variables. Now, we can't add variables in the layout. We've got to do it in the event sheet. Well, you can add variables. You can add variables into your objects, but that's for another time. For now, we're just going to add what's called global variables, which is always going to be in this screen. So right click, add global variable, and we're going to call this score. And the initial value is 0. And while we're here, we're going to create another one. So right click, if my right click will work, add global variable, and this one wants to be called lives. And the initial value for this one can be 3. Right. So now we need to go and display these so that the player can see them. So go back to your layout and right click and insert a new object. And this time we want a text. Now there is a text and a, is there? Or is that in Unreal? Okay. I thought there were 2 different types of text, but no, in this it appears there's only one. Oh no, there's this text input. That's not what we want. We want this T with the dotted square around it. So click on that and hit insert. And then you'll see we'll get this sort of text box. Now, you might want to switch off your snap to grid for this to set this up. So I'm just going to click here to get my properties, and I'm going to turn off snap to grid, and then I can just place this wherever I want it to be. And I'm going to place it there, and then I'm going to call this player score text. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it, and then I'm going to clone it, and I'm going to have another one just underneath it like that. And then I'm going to call this player lives text. Okay. So we've got these 2 text boxes, but we have to set what they say in the code because we need to link these to the global variables we created. Okay, so let's go and do that. So we need to add an event, and we need no, we can come off this tick event. Okay, so that's another thing. You can have multiple actions for an event, and a tick event is something that we want to not have many of. We just want, because they constantly run in the background, so they require a lot of resources. So every tick, and then come down to add another action. We want to click on player score first, player score text, and we want to, in the search bar, type set text. Right, so we want to set text, and then it's going to come up with this. Now you'll see these little red inverted commas or parentheses, I forget what they're called. And what we will, so whatever we write in there, so if I write text in there, that's what will get displayed. All right, so whatever we write inside here in the red writing is what's going to get displayed on the screen. So for this, we want to write score. I believe we're doing score first. Score, and then I'm going to do a colon and then a space. Remember to do the space because that's where your number will go. Now, we want to link this to our variable we've created, and how we do that is by holding down Shift and pressing 7 for an and symbol, an ampersand. And that, what that means is that if whatever I write after it is going to link to this. So this score will be linked to the score variable. So now if I type score, and you'll see with the little planet next to it, this is our score variable. So we can click on that and hit done. Oh, no, wants me to double click, I believe. You can just type it. And then so score will be equal to whatever this number is in this variable, right? So hit done, and we want to do the same for lives. So add action, lives, set text. So whatever we write inside here, it will say. So we want it to say lives. Colon space, and then hit Shift 7, and then type in lives to get our variable. And that's it. Now, of course, we should see this displayed now. So if we hit play, we should see 0 and 3, which we do. All right, because that's what we've set it to. But we haven't got this to change with anything. So that's really quick to set up. So let's do that before we have to finish this video. So What we need to do is we need to find the places we want to add to the score or take away from the lives. So we have player, bullet on collision with enemy, enemy destroyed. So here we want to add a score. So let's add action, system, and then under global and local variables, we want to add to. It's going to add which variable do we want to add to? Score. And then we're going to add by 100. Hit done. Right. So that should add to our score. Now, when do we take away from lives? Well, that's when the enemy, on collision with the player gets destroyed. Add action, system. Under global and local variables, this time we want to subtract from. Which one? Lives by the value of 1. Hit done. Okay, so let's give that a test. So now we should be able to shoot these guys. It's going to add to our score. But if they hit us, we die. Now, we've got no way to respawn yet, so we should just destroy and lose a life. We did destroy and lose a life, but we can't respawn yet. Do we have time to do that in this video? Yeah, I guess we do. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up to the spawn block. I'm going to right-click on it. I'm going to clone it. I'm going to bring it down to where the player is. I'm also going to put the grid back on at this point. So snap to grid. Place that over there, and so you might not want that placed over the top. If that's the case, right click, come to the Z order, and then send it to the bottom of the layer. That will place it underneath or on top if you placed it on the top of the layer. Okay, so what was I going to do? Respawn. So here, if the player dies and we subtract 1 life, let's add another action. Let's wait, because we want the player to recognize that they have died and give them a couple of seconds to just register that. And then what we want to do, we want to add another action on this line. And we want it's enemy spawn block 4 at the moment, but let's go change that. So this is actually the player spawn block. If I can spell. This is actually the player spawn block. And what we want to do, so come back down to line 4, is we want the player spawn block to spawn another object. That object is the player. Okay. So that will now constantly respawn the player. Let's just give that a quick test. I think that should work. We'll give him a couple of seconds. And he's spawned back in. Now, he hasn't spawned back in with the correct angle. So, just to fix that, let's come down here and add an event. And this is a player, and type on created. So when the player gets created, add action, player, and we want to set angle. It's already highlighted for some reason, but that's fine. Set angle. And the angle we want to set it to, remember, is 270. So if we hit play, one quick last test. Now there's loads of different ways to set in this bullet. We didn't have to do it that way. But it should work. Should work for us. 2 seconds and he's back in. Okay, right. So call it a day for that on this video. But in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to limit the amount of shots we can take, because right now you can just spaff that as much as you want. We're going to play around the enemies a bit more so they go over the screen. We're going to recycle the enemies so that when they come to the bottom, they will then respawn at the top. And we'll probably make it so we can go through the sides. And then in the next video after that one, we'll start putting some graphics on it and sound, maybe in the one after that. Okay, I'll catch up with you in the next one.